Welcome back to Bits and Bytes. This is your MK, and in our first troubleshooting guide, we're going to see using Query Editor to connect to Azure SQL database. What are the scenarios that are not supported, and what are the limitations that we have when using Query Editor over other client tools, and then how we can troubleshoot the most common connection error that user would experience when connecting to database using the Query Editor. And here is my Azure Portal, and this is my database. And if you can see that under the database overview or the database page, I have on the left side, we have the Query Editor blade. You would see this is still in preview. So the features that are in preview, in public preview, means they're still not generally available or ready for production environment, but you can still continue to use this public preview features like this Query Editor, and they are fully supported by Microsoft. Just wanted to give you a heads up on what this preview states mean. Here I am connecting to my Query Editor to access my database and perform some queries, right? So what I should know as a limitation in this scenario, right? Here I am using my SQL authentication to connect to my database, which is going to be connecting fine. What we should make sure is to ensure this client from where I'm connecting from, the IP address is whitelisted so that I don't have any challenges. So which is something you can do it at the server level and firewall settings. And when it comes to the authentication, right? So there's a SQL Server authentication and the AAD authentication. Some of the misconception with users are, they think they can actually use Active Directory authentication. In this case, this is my Outlook IE, right? So whether it's an Outlook.com or Gmail.com or other, free mails, are not going to be supported as Azure Active Directory admins. Okay, the user must either be created natively in Azure Active Directory or federated into an Active Directory account, Azure Active Directory account. So also, if you have an Azure AD admin and the sign-in works fine, and you have a two-factor authentication enabled, please note that Query Editor does not support two-factor authentication. Then you will have some challenges there as well. When coming to the limitations, let me go ahead and quickly connect to my database using SQL authentication here. And so if you notice this, right, so your Object Explorer has a very limited option. If you ever use SQL Management Studio or other client tools, you probably see a lot more information as part of the Object Explorer, right? So the reason why this is limited, because Query Editor is a lightweight editor tool that allows you to run a set of T-SQL statements, right? And so the Query Editor, what you also see, I connected only to my user database. So Query Editor does not support connecting to your master DB. To connect to your master DB, you have to use a client tool like Management Studio or Visual Studio or Azure Data Studio. And the other thing is the Query Editor also can't connect to your replica database. The read-only replicas are only accessible through SQL Management Studio and not using Query Editor. That's another limitation. And one other thing that user might experience, sometimes running a longer query that takes over 5 minutes, right? there is a limitation. Query editor has a 5-minute timer for query execution. To run a longer query, you have to use, again, a full-fledged client tool like SSMS or Azure Data Studio or Visual Studio, right? So those are some of the key limitations that you should be aware of. And the other minor things are like it doesn't support IntelliSense and some of those cool features that your client tools might offer, right? So I'm just running a quick select statement. Here I would say it does show up your objects, right? If I'm going to say select star from, it does show this, right? I have these two databases, it's going to show that. But IntelliSense is something, even if the moment I start typing select, it automatically fills the rest of the statement. Those kind of features are not available as part of Query Editor. So it's going to, the experience is going to be exactly the same, what you would do the other way from your client tool, right? And if you press F5, right, in SSMS, it's probably going to refresh your command, but in this case, that's not going to work. If you press F5, you're more likely going to refresh the entire page, right? So those are some of those limitations when using it. And let's take a quick look at troubleshooting scenarios. So when I'm connecting to my query editor, right? I sometimes get a failure saying that a connection to the server could not be established, right? It's technically saying, what it's saying is it's indicating that your local firewall configuration or your network proxy settings has not been set, because the query editor is unable to communicate through port 443 and port 1443. Okay. In such scenarios, you need to enable the outbound HTTPS traffic on these ports. So in this case, if I'm having an error, right, if I have to pull the exact error message, let me paste it over here. So this is probably the error message user would see, right? The connection to the server could not be established. This might indicate you have a local firewall configuration, or your network proxy settings need to be updated. So if you get this error when you're connecting to your query editor, so more likely you need to configure the client where you are connecting from. In this case, this is my machine. So what do? I go open my firewall settings, go to advanced firewall settings, go to outbound firewall, right, in Windows. And once you have this screen creating a new rule, you get in here, choose ports, and then say next. So TCP IP is fine. Since I just fed in the information, it just auto populates. So you have to say port 443, comma, port 1433, right? That's a SQL port, and 443 is for the SSL. And say next, right? And then make sure that you're setting it to allow the connection if it is secure, right? That's the right way to do it. And then say next, and you can skip this part, continue, and then make sure the rules apply to domain, private, and public, right? And then say next. You can set this name. The name can be SQL Query Editor Access, something like that, and finish it. So make sure this is allowed. Once you allow that, you should not see this error message. You would be able to connect to your query editor successfully from your client machine. All right, I'll see you guys in the next episode with a new troubleshooting guide for Azure SQL database. Thank you.